Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at one of nature's most highly specialized biological machines, the Indian bullfrog. Scientifically, it's known as Rana tigrina. Now, at first glance, a frog might just seem like your everyday, simple pond dweller. But honestly, beneath that smooth, slippery surface lies an absolute marvel of evolutionary engineering. In this explainer, we're going to tear down its incredible systems, exploring everything from its adaptable exterior chassis to its incredibly complex internal processing units.
So, here is our blueprint for today. We're going to start with the amphibian blueprint to understand its external hardware. Then, we'll dive into fueling the machine to see how it processes energy. After that, we'll cover its dual environment engine, the command center, and finally, wrap things up with replication and ecology.
All right, part 1, the amphibian blueprint. Let's start with the basics of the frog's external hardware and those absolutely wild built-in survival features.
So the most crucial thing to understand here is that this machine doesn't have an internal heater. Frogs are poikilotherms. That's a fancy way of saying they're cold-blooded, so their body temperature fluctuates right along with their environment. To survive, they have to adapt to the world around them through some pretty incredible survival protocols. For instance, they use active camouflage to blend perfectly into grasses and dry land so predators just pass them right by. And when the temperature outside hits extreme highs or freezing lows, they literally power down. They bury themselves deep underground for summer sleep, which we call aestivation, or winter sleep, known as hibernation.
Think about the sleek exterior of Rana tigrina for a second. It is perfectly streamlined for its environment. The body is divided simply into a head and a trunk. That's it. There's no neck or tail to cause drag and slow it down in the water. And check out its hind limbs. They are way larger and more muscular than the forelimbs, ending in 5 webbed digits, which make them incredibly efficient at swimming, leaping, and burrowing. Oh, and the head is a masterpiece all on its own. The eyes bulge out and are protected by a special nictitating membrane, basically built-in swimming goggles for underwater vision. Plus, right behind the eyes is a membranous tympanum. It's essentially a receiver that picks up sound signals without needing a clunky, protruding external ear.
Now, what's really fascinating is how easily we can tell the models apart just by looking for a few specific communication and mating upgrades. This species exhibits sexual dimorphism. If you look closely at a male frog, you're going to find sound-producing vocal sacs and a very specialized copulatory pad right on the first digit of their forelimbs. Female frogs, on the other hand, they lack both of these external hardware features entirely. It's a highly efficient way of distinguishing the sexes right at a glance.
Okay, moving to part 2. Every engine needs fuel, right? Let's pop the hood and look at how this strict carnivore processes a swallowed insect to power its entire system.
This whole setup creates a continuous, highly efficient disassembly line for insect prey. Because frogs are carnivores, their alimentary canal is actually quite short. They simply don't need a massive winding intestine to break down tough plant matter. The whole process kicks off when their specialized bilobed tongue snaps out to capture prey. Once it's swallowed, the stomach goes right to work, secreting hydrochloric acid and gastric juices to break that food down into a soupy, partially digested mixture called chyme. From there, the chyme moves into the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. This is where it gets hit with bile from the gallbladder to emulsify fats and pancreatic juice to break down carbohydrates and proteins. Finally, the extracted nutrients are absorbed by thousands of tiny finger-like folds called villi and microvilli lining the intestine.
And talk about efficiency. This frog features the ultimate all-in-one exit port. In frogs, the digestive, excretory, and reproductive systems all converge at a single, small chamber called the cloaca. Whether the system needs to expel undigested solid waste, pass urine, or release reproductive cells, every single output is routed through this one, highly streamlined exterior opening.
Next up is part 3. We're looking at the breathing apparatus and the fuel pump that keeps this whole operation running across 2 entirely different environments, water and land.
You guys, think about how cool this is. The frog literally breathes through its skin while submerged, but then effortlessly switches to a lung-based system on land. Down in the water, it uses cutaneous respiration. Its highly vascularized skin acts as the respiratory organ, just passively exchanging dissolved oxygen in the water through simple diffusion. But the second it hops onto dry land, pulmonary respiration kicks in. It pulls air through its nostrils, into its buccal cavity, and down into a pair of pink, sac-like lungs located in its thorax. Oh, and remember that summer and winter sleep we talked about earlier? During estivation and hibernation, the lung system powers down completely. All gaseous exchange happens strictly through the skin.
Now, to move all that oxygen and fuel around, there are 2 parallel fluid networks.
The primary pump is a muscular, three-chambered heart that's 2 atria and 1 ventricle, all safely covered by a pericardium membrane. This pumps blood through a closed vascular network. And here is an incredibly alien yet familiar fact about their blood. Unlike our human red blood cells, a frog's red blood cells actually have nuclei. I mean, how wild is that? And running right alongside the blood vascular system is the lymphatic system, pumping lymph, which is a fluid that lacks red blood cells and certain proteins through its very own distinct channels and nodes.
All right, part 4, the command center. An engine is completely useless without a computer to run it. So let's look at the frog's wiring and the chemical messengers that keep everything perfectly synced up.
Running a machine this complex requires flawless chemical coordination. The endocrine system in a frog is highly evolved. From the pituitary and thyroid down to the adrenals and gonads, these glands are constantly secreting hormones. These hormones act as chemical messengers, regulating literally everything from growth and metabolism to reproduction. They ensure the whole biological machine operates in perfect harmony.
And controlling it all, of course, is the neural network. Just like a delicate CPU housed in a tough outer case, the central nervous system is protected by a bony structure we call it brain box, or the cranium. The brain itself is incredibly structured. It's divided into the forebrain, which handles smells and higher functions, the midbrain, characterized by a pair of optic lobes for processing all that visual data, and the hindbrain, composed of the cerebellum and medulla oblongata. This central processing unit then branches out into the peripheral nervous system, which includes 10 distinct pairs of cranial nerves connecting the brain box directly to the rest of the body's sensors.
So, all of this brings us to a massive, really important question. It links this single organism to the entire world around it. We've seen just how perfectly engineered this creature is internally, but what actually happens if you remove this biological machine from its environment?
To answer that, we have to move to our final section. Let's look at how the frog replicates and the critical, load-bearing role this species plays in the greater environmental network. When we compare the replication hardware of the male and female frogs, we see some fascinating plumbing differences. In the male reproductive system, you'll find these yellowish, ovoid testes. And what's super interesting here is how interconnected the systems are. 10 to 12 tubes called vasa efferentia arise from the testes and actually enter the kidneys. They open into Bitter's canal before eventually passing out through the cloaca. Now, the female system is quite different. The ovaries are situated near the kidneys, sure, but there is absolutely no functional connection between them. A completely separate pair of oviducts arises from the ovaries to safely deliver the ova down to the cloaca.
And this sequence, it is a masterclass in biological mass production. A single mature female can lay anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 ova at one time. Imagine trying to coordinate that. Fertilization is entirely external, taking place out in the open water. And once fertilized, the eggs don't just grow into tiny frogs. No, they develop into an entirely different-looking aquatic larval stage called a tadpole. Over time, this tadpole undergoes a massive internal and external restructuring, a process called metamorphosis. It completely transforms its chassis and systems to become the adult, dual-environment machine we've been exploring today.
I really want to leave you with this final thought. This ultimate amphibian machine isn't just an anatomical wonder. It is an absolutely critical pillar of our entire ecosystem. By eating massive amounts of insects, they actively protect agricultural crops and control pest populations. At the exact same time, they serve as a crucial food source for larger predators. They are a fundamental link in both the food chain and the broader food web. So the next time you hear a frog croaking by a pond, don't just think of a simple, slimy animal. Think of a highly evolved dual-environment engine, perfectly calibrated to keep our natural world in balance. It really makes you wonder, if this much incredible engineering goes into a single common frog, what other biological machines are silently holding our world together? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. See you next time.